Hello, thanks for watching. We're looking at the radar really kind of over the lunch hour here across the northwest. A few things to talk about. We're still seeing some rain here in the Willamette Valley. Not the freezing rain like we saw yesterday and the ice accumulations, except for some areas just kind of near the river. If you look beyond that into eastern Washington, have some snow, heavier snow developing there. Winter storm warnings are active now in eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, seeing some snow pick up as well, and then even up into the Golden Triangle of Montana, kind of up here in northwest Montana, seeing some heavier snow get in now there where there are winter storm warnings active as well. I do want to take you back and look at Oregon. We did have the significant ice accumulations. I think some of the earlier forecasts showed potentially more ice and freezing rain up near Portland. We did see some ice accumulations there, but the area that really got the worst of it, I think, was the southern portions of the Willamette Valley. Still 40,000 customers there nearly without power, less or so if you go further north. Very impactful events, some road closures still lingering. They're clearing out mostly at this time, and then conditions are looking to improve there a little bit. But again, an impactful event nonetheless. If you look just at the current hazards and the National Weather Service advisories active across the West region now, we can see those winter storm warnings that I mentioned active in eastern Washington through the Golden Triangle of Montana, even have a blizzard warning here in some of the mountains. Snake River Valley should see some of the snow pick up again here this evening with some winter weather advisories active there, and then winter weather advisories active in the Cascades as well. If you look further south, and that looks relatively clear, not the biggest colored pencil being pulled out here for parts of California, Nevada, Arizona, even parts of Utah as well. So more activity, more winter weather up in the northern regions here. I think not necessarily the winter part, that's going to change a bit as we go through the weekend here. We'll see some of that activity, not necessarily shift wholesale south, but certainly more activity coming into parts of California, potentially Southern California, Arizona as well. I'll save that as we get into the forecast here. Next thing I want to show you all, this is the jet stream forecast from the ECMWF, the European weather model here. I'm going to make this valid here as of Wednesday afternoon here with the recording of this video. What I want to keep your eyes pointed to are these fast winds, upper levels of the atmosphere, what we call the jet stream here north of Hawaii. Hawaii kind of hiding here down on the lower left portion of the screen. I'm going to take this forecast forward, and what we're really going to be watching for is another one of these Pacific jet extensions trying to make its way over to California, really through the weekend and then into early next week as well. That's going to have a big implications for the forecast. It's what we watch for in these El Nino years to deliver some of these bigger storms to California. If I take this forecast through Thursday and then into Friday and see something of a trough here and some of the southwest flow over spreading parts of the northwest, keep that in mind as we go into the precipitation forecast. Really, as we get into Friday evening, now we have this extension which started way over here by Hawaii, now making its way all the way over toward parts of southwest California with that kind of quintessential southwest to northeast flow that helps to bring moisture into the state of California. That moisture along the coast equals rain, sometimes flooding at times like we've seen this year, and then as the higher elevations in the Sierra Nevadas, of course, snowfall there. This is kind of really the theme of what we're going to be watching for this weekend. If I take this forward through Saturday, this forecast now into Sunday, I mean, this is your kind of bona fide fast-moving winds coming out of the Pacific north of Hawaii, making their way all the way across the Pacific over to the state of California. What we watch for to deliver some of these bigger storms here, this now valid as of Sunday morning and Sunday around lunchtime. If I take it even out beyond that, Monday and Tuesday, we finally get less of this onshore flow, at least in terms of these upper level winds or the jet streams, with the winds kind of parallel to the coastline. That tends to bring less precipitation through California, with more of a focus now in Northern California up into Oregon. If I take the forecast well beyond the 7-day point, you can see some of that axis, that shift into a ridge here with focus more on the Pacific Northwest in terms of that onshore flow. That kind of defines what we're going to be watching for, I think, in the forecast going through not only the next few days, but even out into next week as well. Might as well just get into that portion of the forecast. Still looking at that European weather model, but now at the precipitation and the precipitation type to determine, the timing, the intensity of some of these events as they come through. We're starting this here. This is valid as of Wednesday around lunchtime. Again, right at the recording of this video, we can see the rain that we just looked at on radar across the Willamette Valley. Some of that freezing rain still lingering up near the river there. If you look to the east, you can see that snowfall in parts of eastern Washington, Oregon, and the Snake River Valley. I'm going to take this forecast through this evening. You can see some of that heavier snow now overspreading into Montana. We saw that just kind of getting started on the radar here overnight tonight, expecting heavy snowfall there. But the system really trying to clear out a bit more as we go through the day on Thursday, when it gets replaced by potentially more rainfall through parts of the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle-Tacoma area, parts of the lower Willamette Valley, and then some extra winter weather getting into parts of eastern Washington at times. That pink color you see there, that is freezing rain forecast from the European weather model. It is kind of hard to forecast freezing rain. It's kind of a Goldilocks event. So potential here for some freezing rain in kind of the state line area, Washington, Oregon, Walla Walla, Kennewick area. The accumulations right now don't look, kind of what I would call ice storm level, not anything terribly too concerning, but it is hard to forecast. Like we saw with the Willamette Valley yesterday on Tuesday, the events can ramp up quick. So not a huge concern yet, but keep an eye on this area here along the state line for some ice accumulations. Otherwise, further to the south, across California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, quiet starting the day Friday. I think that's going to change. That's when we saw that Pacific jet extension get right closer to the coast of California. So if I take this forecast now through Friday evening, we can see the first effects of that extension now affecting parts of Northern California with precipitation, Central California area, San Francisco, getting into parts of the Sacramento Valley, potentially some rainfall starting all the way through the central coastal areas. That's Friday night. We go through Friday night, overnight into Saturday morning, precipitation now getting into the Central Valley, snowfall starting up in the Sierra Nevadas, still seeing rainfall for parts of the Northern California coastline, and now potentially precipitation, not the heaviest, getting all the way through parts of Southern California, the Los Angeles area, save perhaps for the San Diego area. As we go through the day Saturday evening, continued activity across now Oregon, the Willamette Valley. We see activity all the way through Southern California now, lightening up perhaps a bit there Saturday afternoon for parts of the Central Valley, but still seeing some snowfall there in the Sierra Nevadas. And then more of a focus as we go through Saturday night into early Sunday, potential for the Southern California area, San Diego, the lower Colorado River Valley to get in on some more meaningful precipitation, I think, going into Sunday morning. And it's really Sunday evening, now where this forecast is valid for, that I think the stronger of these systems related to this Pacific jet extension is going to come through. Seeing heavier rain now through San Francisco, heavier rain through the Sacramento Valley, snow up in the Sierra Nevadas, Willamette Valley, still seeing rainfall here at this point on Sunday evening. If I take the forecast into the overnight, now early Monday morning, much heavier snow falling here through the Sierra Nevadas, particularly the Southern Sierras. I think it's going to be more of a Southern Sierra event. One of the areas out west we're really running low on that snowpack at this time of year, so I don't think that's a bad thing in terms of that snowpack conversation. Heavy rain through the Central California coastal area, getting rainfall now potentially all the way through the southern reaches of the San Joaquin Valley. This forecast now valid Sunday night, early Monday, and then potentially Southern California seeing another round of precipitation from this going into early Monday with the lower Colorado River Valley, Yuma, Imperial County, along the Colorado River seeing additional precipitation amounts Monday evening. And it's really a similar story. You go all the way up through Washington, the Willamette Valley of Oregon, Northern California, Southern California, parts of Nevada, parts of Arizona. I mean, a widespread precipitation event. We follow these extensions. This is what we look for in an El Nino year. This looks pretty typical. January, a big precipitation event coming through. Finally clearing out, I think, as we go through the day Tuesday, looking at the potential for a midweek system for parts of the Pacific Northwest. Remains to be seen. We're getting out further in the forecast here how much of this is going to impact parts of California, but perhaps parts of Northern California. Can't rule out some precipitation getting into parts of the Central Valley, perhaps more so the Sacramento Valley, perhaps the Northern Sierras as we go through the day on Wednesday here. Looking more like the Willamette Valley, seeing another round of precip midweek next week. And then if you remember, when we looked at that jet stream forecast, that's when we saw that ridge kind of develop, or that jet stream extension evolve into a ridge across the western U.S. We went toward the end of next week. Again, getting far out into that forecast, can't put too much weight on this, but are expecting a warm-up, a break in this precipitation at some point, I think at the end of next week, with perhaps some continued focus on parts of the Pacific Northwest through Thursday and Friday. That's the skinny on the 7-day forecast there. A lot of precipitation we talked about. To sum it up, California getting quite a bit of rain. The Sierra Nevada is expecting significant snowfall there. If we look at the 7-day precipitation anomalies from the ECMWF, we're wet. We're wet through the coast of Oregon, wet through the Willamette Valley, all the way through western Washington, Northern California. Perhaps there's some areas we're concerned with some flooding here. The Northern California coast, perhaps some areas of the Central California coast where we've seen some flooding this year. The Central Valley of California getting rainfall from this all the way through Southern California. We're talking San Diego, parts of Los Angeles County, parts of lower Colorado River Valley, parts of South Central and Southeastern Arizona at times. I mean, this is a pretty widespread rainfall event. Looking at the 7-day precipitation anomaly forecast here, again, from that European weather model. If we look at the rainfall total values from the Weather Prediction Center from the National Weather Service, looking at over an inch possible in the Central Valley, particularly the San Joaquin Valley, except for the far southern reaches where we're looking more half an inch to an inch potentially of rainfall there. Multiple inches of rain. This is that slight flooding concern we have for the central coastal areas, more so here along those northern coastal areas with amounts getting up over 4 inches. If that comes in a short amount of time, that can be a concern. Even Southern California now looking at over an inch of rainfall. Lesser amounts are going to get east of those coastal mountains in California. That's normal, but still expecting measurable precipitation here through the lower Colorado River Valley, somewhere around 1/4 of an inch, perhaps a little bit more than that in some of these select locations. Willamette Valley seeing continued precipitation, obviously, over the next 7 days. I think I included their name in every one of these events that came through, looking at certainly over an inch of rainfall there, potentially 2 inches or more when all is said and done from this event. Further east than that, not as much as what we're talking about, maybe the Snake River Valley or far western Nevada, but certainly for the coastal areas and then those immediate coastal valleys on the inside, looking at widespread rainfall over the next 7 days, kind of waning for California, I think midweek and into late week, but continuing for parts of the Pacific Northwest later next week, kind of near next weekend. If we look at temperatures over the next 7 days, this is different certainly than what we were dealing with kind of earlier in January. Warm up expected. This is going to be some of these warmer events, given that kind of the subtropical jet extension is coming more out of the central Pacific. Not looking at widespread freeze issues with a lot of that snowfall on the ground in the Golden Triangle, keeping some of those temperatures suppressed there, but pretty warm across the western U.S. over the next 7 days as a result of some of these systems coming up with that more southwest trajectory, which brings some warmer air, some higher snow levels. And if we look at that snowfall forecast here, not as much snow coming through the Cascades with those higher snow levels, not as much snow coming through the central, kind of in the northern Sierras here, but a very good, significant contribution to that snowpack now. If you look at the southern Sierras, so it's an area we've been keeping track of this year that's been running well below average. This is going to really help them. We're talking 1-2 feet of snowfall, potentially even more of that in some of these select areas. Again, higher snow levels, but the areas above that certainly going to be seeing significant snowfall through the kind of the south central and southern Sierras here of California. If we take a look at that snowpack map here, valid as of yesterday, it looks different. I mean, we looked at this in early January. It was red and orange pretty much everywhere. Now we have areas in green, which are about near average for this time of year. We have some areas in light blue, kind of in parts of Oregon or Nevada, signifying above average or at least slightly above average. If you look closely at the Sierra Nevadas, I'll try to zoom this in a little bit here. That's an area where we're really running below average still at this point. But rather than being at 35% of our average at this point in January, we're at 55%. So moving in the right direction, not at normal yet. In the southern Sierras, if we're going to pick on anywhere as the area running, I think most below average at this point, some of these significant hydrological areas. So they're in the forecast for some big snowfall this weekend. We'll kind of revisit this next week and the week after to see how much closer to average some of these areas can get. But the forecast, I think, looking at an improvement here across some of these areas. If we look at the Berkeley Sierra Snow Lab, again near Donner Pass by Lake Tahoe, this red line is where we've accumulated snowpack this year. That blue line is the historical average. So we're closing that gap a little bit. We've kind of had much more normal snowfall here through the first part of January. I think, unfortunately, the Central Sierra is not going to get as much out of this forecast. Could see kind of a late shift with some of those snowfall amounts trying to push north. Haven't seen that yet, but I don't want to rule it out. So we'll kind of revisit this next week to see, whether this is more of a plateau, which would maybe increase that deficit. Or if we can get some of that more significant snowfall up into the Central Sierras, we can close up on that historical average, kind of the trend that we've been seeing a little bit over the last 2 weeks. If we look out at the forecast beyond that, I'll make this valid here kind of as we go through Sunday night. That's when kind of this impact, I think, of this extension is going to be strongest, particularly on California. See that kind of quintessential textbook extension of the Pacific jet stream heading onshore in parts of California. But if I take the forecast through the end of the week quickly here, you can see it kind of devolving into a big upper level ridge, this sort of hill or the mountain in the jet stream, if you will, that tends to bring in warmer conditions. We're talking now January 27th, so kind of Friday into Saturday, all the way into next week. So really kind of think of this as next weekend, potentially a warm-up and a break for California, at least if this forecast is going to be believed here from the ECMWF ensemble. If we just get another opinion here, go over to the GFS ensemble for that same time period, pretty similar forecast, right? You see this ridge developing across the western U.S., would expect warmer weather here across California, Nevada, parts of Arizona, would nearly rule out freeze concerns if this were verified. with some potential precipitation here where this onshore flow is coming into parts of Washington, maybe far northern Oregon. If we look at the temperature anomalies here from the ECMWF ensemble, again, kind of out into the end of next week. This is through January 25th, Thursday, out to the Tuesday, the 30th, and that early week, the week after. Widespread warm temperature anomalies across the western U.S., including now parts of Montana, which were very, very cold over the past weekend. I'm sure you saw some of the news reports about the very cold wind chills, talking -5, -35 degrees Fahrenheit, non-wind chill, just the absolute temperatures there, very cold in parts of Montana. Look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Again, kind of agreeing with what we saw with that big upper level ridge developing across the western U.S. These higher percent chances of above average temperatures for that January 25th through the 31st time frame. Really kind of the end of the next week and then out into that early week, the week after that. If we look at the extended ECMWF forecast, this is looking now a month out, January 25th through February 25th. Wanted to show this because it's kind of what we saw as we went through the end of December with that background El Nino state. The European extended forecast has been continually advertising this wetter pattern across parts of California, even parts of Oregon, even through areas in Southern California. Curiously, despite that still running a bit drier in the Sierra Nevadas, that hasn't necessarily been a bad forecast so far this year. We see this deficit in the Sierra Nevadas despite having a lot of these rainfall events to talk about in parts of coastal California or maybe the Central Valley or maybe through Southern California. So expecting more storm systems to come through. We'll see about the Sierra Nevadas. I think getting some of these systems coming in, increases the chances, of course, for more snowfall. We see the Southern Sierras now through the weekend getting a very good addition to their snowpack at this point. So I think it's going to be an ongoing story. We'll keep an eye on it this year. Of course, it's relevant that we're in an El Nino year. You want to kind of capitalize on these friendly water years in case we have to go through, maybe a multi-episodal drought in the future. It's important to kind of build up those reservoirs. They're above average right now for most places across California, save for a few select reservoirs. So want to build up that good snowpack this year in case next year were to be some sort of drought situation or maybe the year after that. Now, in that vein, the Climate Prediction Center released their latest January ENSO update, ENSO being ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, tracking whether we're going to be in El Nino or La Nina or neutral, right in between. And I'll show you that now. This is looking at that ENSO forecast from the Climate Prediction Center for these kind of 3-month stretches going out through the year here in 2024. Of course, right now, January, February, March, we're in an El Nino. We're in a pretty strong El Nino here. So the probability in January, February, March being an El Nino is at 100%. That makes sense. But as we start shifting out into the forecast, February, March, April, you can see these on the bottom here. March, April, May, June, now getting into summer. Well, El Nino is expected to fade. We've talked about that. That's a very common evolution. El Nino tends to fade in the new year, especially towards summer. Kind of anywhere from April to June, expecting us to exit El Nino officially, and that will be replaced by ENSO neutral, which is neither a La Nina or neither an El Nino. But curiously, the Climate Prediction Center has been increasing these La Nina probabilities as we go through kind of the back half of 2024. Those are those blue bars that you can see creeping up, almost kind of stalking us here at the end of the year in 2024 to the point where by August, September, October, looking at an above 60% chance of La Nina. I will say, I'm not totally convinced of this. I'm not saying La Nina, we can't flip right back into a La Nina at the end of this year after the strong El Nino event. That does happen. It's a thing, we've seen it in the past a number of times. But what's making me a little bit hesitant or skeptical of this forecast at this point is just looking at past kind of the historical behavior, or if you will, the pattern of this kind of ENSO relationship, at least, over the last maybe 50 plus years here. And I'll try to explain to you what I'm looking at here. If we look at the recent near triple dip of La Nina that we just had, we had multi-year drought in California and some other areas as a result of this. Colorado River levels very low. Obviously, the stories about Lake Mead. Well, that happened, I think, in part because we were in La Nina really at the start of the new decade up until very recently when we came in June into this El Nino finally in 2023. So we had a triple dip. We've quickly strengthened into a strong, almost very strong El Nino here in 23-24 winter. Of course, if we go back in time and look at some of these strong El Ninos from the past, 15 and 16, 97, 98, very strong one there as well. Look at how quickly these fell off in the new year. That's pretty common. In fact, if you go to 15 and 16, the super El Nino of 15 and 16 fell very quickly into a weak La Nina just that very next year. So again, it can happen that we can flip quickly back into a La Nina at 97, 98, flip back into a triple dip La Nina here. So I can see the precedence there that you have a strong El Nino, flips back into a La Nina. It is possible. It has happened in the past. But what I don't see here is if we kind of pick on these triple dip La Nina events that we really just came out of, maybe the most recent one here, but the most recent one before that was actually after that Super Nino event in 97, 98. This was a triple dip in 99, 2000, even a weak one here in 2001. And the El Nino after that was moderate, but did not dive back into a La Nina. If you go to a triple event before that triple dip La Nina back in the early 70s, our El Nino after that one really stuck around in kind of a weak El Nino for a few years and really never dropped back down to a La Nina for nearly a decade after that. If we look at another triple dip, La Nina event, or near triple dip, at least in the 50s, strengthened into a strong El Nino after that, and that one didn't even get back into near La Nina territory after that. So as much as there's precedence for going back into a La Nina, I think if you look at some of these, and you pick on some of these triple dip La Ninas that have happened in the past, we did not go from El Nino after that quickly back to a La Nina. So that is at least warning some of my skepticism that we will not be talking about a La Nina at the end of 2024. If we are, right, that increases the chance of a drought conversation. If the Sierra Nevadas in this year, and we're talking about March and April, those deficits continuing in California for some of that snowpack, and the chances are increasing for La Nina in the forecast, that would prompt some concern. But until kind of I see those two stars align, until we get all the way through this winter, not something I'm going to raise alarms about just yet. With that, I think I'll end the video here. Thank you for watching again today. And if I don't see you, I'll talk to you next week, next Wednesday. Thanks for watching.